Just in case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barreiro's Top 5 at 5. Brought to you by Gutter Helmet of Minnesota. Never clean your gutters again. Learn more at gutterhelmetmn.com.
Gutter Helmet of Minnesota, the fine sponsor of this segment for quite some time. We always appreciate their support and their loyalty. Guardsy is not here to deliver on a very, I think, enticing top 5 at 5 day, right? The day after, the afternoon and evening after a terrific night of entertainment and sports success last night that we're not all that familiar with. Where would you like to begin as if I don't know?
Time now for the obligatory Kevin Fallness Minnesota Wild mention.
A historic night started with this.
Back of the net, a centering pass stolen. Boldy, the empty net again. He scores! Why not? Boldy seals the deal. In Game 6, the Wild have a 5-2 lead, and they're going to move on to the second round.
A shout out to Target Center as well for putting on the feed, like you mentioned earlier, in the closing seconds. Yeah. As
we strongly urged earlier in the day on the show on Thursday. We don't like to talk about changing lives here on this program, but somebody was clearly listening because it's a no-brainer. There doesn't have to be, look, the rivalry that exists between Fallness and Johnny Athletic, for example, it doesn't have to be shared by the entire Twin Cities area. The teams themselves, I think, can. Is this not one Minnesota? It's supposed to be one Minnesota. So it was a perfect touch. And again, what were you announcing? That they won.
Yeah.
They were advancing. So you get the crowd that's already pumped up, starting to believe that the Wolves can pull off this nonsense. And now you got that on the other end, and it was good video. It was well played. It was dramatic. It was perfect. It was a nice touch.
Yeah, I'm just so over this is still, to me, in the window of celebration. We don't even know when Game 1's going to be against the Colorado Avalanche. But at least a day and change that we just, especially for the Wild, that you just have to be able to soak it in and just enjoy life. Professional effort from everyone. Wally was fantastic. Quinn Hughes had his kind of breakout offensive. He was great the entire series, but as far as scoring goals, which you don't expect him to do, he's a superstar, but he's a defenseman. He put him in several times. Just a fantastic start-to-finish game with maybe 2 minutes of trepidation, and the rest was just a celebration. So, huge win for the Wild and historic day. I would argue, is this not, you talk about the calendar of contentment or comfort.
Well, another
is this
suggestion.
Not the best day?
Well, the another suggestion has been made calling it the calendar of serenity as opposed to calamity. So you end it with you don't have the alliteration.
Yeah,
but you got the ITY at the end. That's pretty good too.
Yeah.
So you're asking whether it should have been last night or today? It's really both. Yeah.
Well,
the games took place last night.
What I'm saying was yesterday the best day in Minnesota sports history? The Twins win the World Series.
Yeah, I can't go because of that. I can't go quite that far, but it's up there.
Mount Rushmore.
It's absolutely up there because of the unusual circumstances of it, right? And because there has been so much failure and ineptitude for getting out of the first round between these two teams over the years the decades they've existed. It's definitely there. And I'll say again, the way each team won, I think, also added to the myth of the whole evening.
Oh, here was Game 2.
The horn will sound, and this series is over. With a 110-98 win in Game 6, the Timberwolves close out the Denver Nuggets. It's the second time in 3 years the Wolves have upset the higher-seeded Nuggets. 2 years ago, it was a thrilling 7-game series, capped by the greatest second-half comeback in Game 7 history. This time, the Wolves and Jaden McDaniels. Without Anthony Edwards over the final 2 games, without Dante DiVincenzo over the final 2 games, and without Ayo Dosunmu in the closeout Game 6, the Wolves send the Nuggets reeling into the offseason.
And it was so funny how it's 2 similar games, both at home, both Game 6. You're up 3-2, chance to close out a rival. And yet they felt so different because the Wild, sans Brodin, were mostly healthy.
Yeah.
They were playing the better of the series, and it just felt like it was time for them to get over that hump. Where the Wolves, I came into that with trepidation of, if your name has a G next to it, you probably are hurt in some fashion of the Timberwolves. And they managed to get it done, and managed is selling them short, I think.
Well, and here's the kicker, and you heard the score from the Horton call there. They won by 12.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you assume, all right, if they pull this off, it's going to have to be right to the wire. They hit a late shot. They get a weird call, whatever the case may be. They kind of pulled away late in that game. Denver never really made a serious charge. They made a couple of minor charges, but never a big one. And the stat that probably symbolizes the whole bit more than any other is this was, I think, the second time in this series that the Wolves held Denver under 100. Denver had been held under 100 in over 82 games, twice out of 82. But twice in the postseason, the Wolves did it to them. And again, it's why I've said from the beginning, this is a testament to defensive big balls fortitude, largely headlined by Jaden and by Rudy Gobert. Because this is, all along I mentioned, if the Wolves are going to win this series, they're not going to outscore Denver. So what do? You have limitations offensively. This is even before the injuries. So you try to find a way to take away some of their offense, knowing that you have the advantage of the fact that they don't play defense, which I think we proved once again with, was it 58 points in the paint last night or 68? It was some ridiculous advantage in the paint, driving once again with impunity. But to me, that tells the story. You hold one of the greatest statistical offenses in the history of the league, at least on the basis of the regular season, to less than 100 points twice. And that's if your Doberman defense is your calling card, that was I think the only way you were going to have a chance, especially with the number of people you had out.
Lastly, there are 6 game 6s tonight.
Wow. Between hockey and basketball?
Correct. So you've got Pistons Magic, Cavs Raptors, Lakers Rockets, and then Lightning Canadiens, Sabres Bruins, Golden Knights Mammoth. When you sit down in your trademark Barca Lounger,
it's going to be like, it's
are you
going to
flip around?
Yeah, a lot. The problem again is, I assume some of these games are streamed and some of these are network, like over the air. So cable. So you run into that issue of it's harder to go back and forth in that environment. It's a lot easier if they're all on, 206. Well, for me, DirecTV, ESPN, or TNT, 245, or ABC or NBC. It's a lot easier to do that. I don't think that's the way it's set up anymore.
Yeah, I'll answer the question. The bigger of the sports is on ESPN, and the smaller of the sports are on Prime Video.
There you go. That explains all of it.
So Lightning Canadiens start on ESPN
so you will be all over the place, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's between ESPN, ESPN 2. Yeah, trying to figure that out. But yeah, that's it's a great night, especially when both teams can sit back and relax. They know who their matchups are going to be, and now you just can watch without.
And we don't know
no care in the world
yet what night the Stars will start in Denver. Right, that's still up in the air. The belief is it's going to be Monday or Tuesday, but nobody knows. Guerin said it depends largely on some of these results tonight. In the case of the Wolves, we do know the schedule, and they open in San Antonio Davie on Monday night. I think the home games are a week from tonight and a week from this coming Sunday, games 3 and 4 at Target Center.
There you have it.
That's plenty. Yeah, that's more than enough. Let's get a brief pause in. I want to get to some texts we have not addressed earlier. Get to a couple of other nuggets, no pun intended, and then prepare for Ben Goessling at about 5:30.
The Fan and BigDeck.com will give you a shot to win bonus bucks for the National Cash Contest. Just head over to KFAN.com and enter the keyword coin. The keyword coin at KFAN.com. Keyword coin. Score your chance at top-tier tickets from John Mulaney to Santana and the Doobie Brothers, My Chemical Romance, and more. Don't wait. Enter now. KFAN.com. Keyword contest.
Let me correct myself. The Wolves held Denver under 100 points 3 times. in this series. 3 times in the best of 7 series. It only went 6. In game number 3, a 113-96 victory. In game number 4, that was the Dosunmu 43-point game, 112-96. And last night, 110-98. By the way, Rudy Gobert, I think, totaled during the regular season 8 assists in the entire season. He had 8 assists last night. Wheeling and dealing. Who knew that he was a Joker-like ball distributor, Rudy Gobert? John the mail carrier writes, the way Jaden played Murray was mythical. Some of Murray's facial expressions made you think he was questioning his life choices. Jaden terrorized him for a week and a half. It's true. That is how he looked. He looked beaten down and beaten, and he kind of acknowledged how good the defense was and the approach that the Wolves took. And as I said, I still think it's more on him than on Joker, but Joker was clearly not overall the guy that we have grown accustomed to watching. You're not going to get past, again, for single moments of calendar of comfort, contentment, serenity, Twins 1991 World Series for sure, because that was not only a Game 7, as was 87, but 91 was the Game 7, right? It was the Jack Morris Game 7. Nothing is going to touch that because that wasn't first round. That was literally sudden death to win the World Series. But a lot of you are too young to have any sort of connection to that because it's been, even I can do that math, 1991, that'd be 27 years ago, or coming up on 27 years. So that's still going to be in an exalted place. But last night will have its spot as being very, very unusual. Very there's not many others that you're going to put up there ahead of it. Let's put, even though they're both first round series. Nate in North Dakota wants to nickname Jaden McDaniels the Little Ticket. KG's toughness, attitude, defensive game in a smaller package. That's Nate in North Dakota. Not bad. I kind of like that.
It's funny to talk about someone who is 6'9"
as being the little ticket. Yeah, that's true. Dan, for Minnesota sports fans, it was truly an epic night. We're not used to that kind of success. Even though the Twins will always be my team, I agree that they currently are not worth the airtime. Well, my wish is that during the Wolves and Wild run, the Vikings coverage would need to be reduced. For the same reason, they have zero to brag about. They should also have to earn the attention. I get that sentiment, and I will admit that the Vikings do kind of get grandfathered in simply because the built-in football interest dwarfs the baseball interest at this point, even in a town where, you've got 2 World Series trophies. That's just the fact of it. And it's not always earned in the case of Vikings. Quite frankly, it's often not earned at all, but it's kind of there. But the beauty of both these teams extending, well, first of all, it's the what we in the radio business call radio ratings seasonal boost. We love anything that gives us a seasonal boost. More people plugged in because they are following their favorite team. Because ordinarily by now, one or both of them is out. Now, the Wolves have been pretty consistent lately of making the playoffs and even getting past round 1, have reached the Final Four the last 2 years. They're trying to make it 3 in a row, as hard as that's going to be this time. But the fact that there's programming, there are games to bounce off of for the way these schedules are set up, at least 2 more weeks. That in of itself should provide us some relief from trying to cover the same old ground regarding your Vikings. I will throw this football note out, and maybe we'll even get to this with Ben Goessling. Did you see is there a legitimate Aaron Rodgers rumor out there, or was it just something to get me going as an A-Rod guy? It's suggested that Arizona is sniffing around him. I thought, though, I thought the way the contract designation that the Steelers have put on A-Rod, I thought, didn't they have some exclusivity to him or some kind of, or maybe it's an opportunity to match. I don't know. But I thought I saw something about the Arizona Cardinals being in the mix.
I haven't heard anything about that, but I wouldn't mind landing there. But I mean, either way, you're not having an all-star team. The Cardinals are an objectively worse team.
That's true.
But the Steelers are, a 500 team with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's the difference.
Dan, how much influence do you think A-Rod has in the Wolves locker room? Brings some swag and pumps them up. I don't think any in that sense. I wouldn't read anything into that part of it. I think where they might have some influence is simply, being ambitious, being willing to pay the big bucks. They're going to have to prove that they will be as willing as, quite frankly, Glenn Taylor was. Glenn Taylor was a very flawed owner, and we've talked about a lot of that. But he did spend, most of the time at least, much of the time. And now it's these guys. So they're going to have to prove that they're up to continuing to spend and to not be too afraid of the second apron, et cetera. But in terms of the swag stuff, like in the locker room, no. I honestly don't think it would matter if it was A-Rod or somebody not known for their athletic pursuits. I don't think most players give a damn about it. They might be interested in his history for a reason or two, but I don't think in any way it has any kind of impact on the team approach. I would be shocked. Dante was there last night. Where was Ant? I meant to ask that question of Johnny. I don't think he was there. I don't think Anthony Edwards was there. What I don't know is why, if that's about part of his whatever regimen they've set up, whatever situation he's in terms of getting the knee in shape. I don't know, but I don't. Hell, he's not even there for warm-ups. Usually he comes in a little bit later. So Dante got his moment late where they did show him on the big screen, which is another terrific touch by whoever makes those kinds of decisions. It was a great idea. This was after somebody hit a three, as I recall it. And Dante could be seen smiling and celebrating, which I thought was good. But Anthony, I don't believe, was there. I saw no indication that he was there. Dan, how often has that happened where two teams have clinched a playoff series in the same town? I don't know. A couple of people have brought up, well, in a lot of places, it couldn't have happened because they share an arena. In some cities, the hockey and basketball share an arena, basketball teams and hockey teams. I don't know how many of those that's the case in terms of sharing. I have absolutely no idea. I do know it happens some places and not so much others. Lastly, reminder, Lavelle Neal III predicted the Stars would beat the Wild. Well, he may have. I don't even know if they were forced to do predictions for the series. I don't think there'd be anything particularly outlandish about that decision. There were a lot of people picking the Stars to beat the Wild. Now, we look back on it, and it may look a little silly now based on, in some ways, the dominance that the Wolves had. But nationally, probably there were. I've said this before, whether it's fair to an individual team or not, most of the national predictors, they're not studying the local team as much as we do. They're just not, because they can't. They don't have time. So they're going to often go with what? Well, how have they done? They got a postseason history? Yeah, they usually lose in the first round. Who are they playing? Dallas? Well, Dallas still has a lot of talent, doesn't it? Yeah, they do. Didn't they make it to the conference finals each of the last 3 years? Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll just go with Dallas. It doesn't have anything to do necessarily with reality, but it's not a conspiracy against the Wild. Anytime you have a team that just doesn't have much playoff success, the onus is going to be on you to prove that you should be picked before you're going to be picked, even if the fact remains that perhaps you just have a better team than that team that tends to be a favorite.
Now, if Lavelle didn't vote for the Wild in some like poll, maybe to get into the second round, like he just decided he didn't want to vote for us, then that would have been a better pick.
That would have been, that would have been very different. Don't want to talk Twins, Dan? Thought you said they were the best team in the league. 2 weeks ago, you ripped the ball guys because they were overachieving. You said you didn't want to hear from us about how it was too early in the season to make a judgment. Now you want to hear about the Twins? Aren't you their biggest fan this year, Dan? Get off the air, poser. I was a faithful listener for years, but KFAN is hot garbage because of your absolute buffoonery. 2-8 guy might not understand the way satire works, but that's okay too. We're glad he's with us, and we're going to assume we're going to think the best. We're going to think that he's going to stay with us despite his consternation, despite his controversy, despite his concerns. But in all seriousness, 2-8 guy, a little unsolicited advice, whether you want it or not. I'd lay really low about the Twins fan stuff right now. I don't think anybody is all that interested in any of this stuff regarding the Minnesota Twins for the foreseeable future. Maybe that will somehow change by an incredible surge, but I just don't think that's going to play. I don't think you're going to have a lot of persuasive customers on your side of this particular story. We're going to chat with Ben. We're going to get to some football. We might even, Ben Goessling's one of us. So we might even ask him about what he saw last night as a guy who grew up a sports fan in this town, has seen a lot of misery, has heard about a lot of other misery, of how that felt, how he sort of processed it and took it all in. And if you have football questions as well, 646-86. Back in a minute. I'm being corrected again that my math has failed me and that the Twins last won the World Series. That I said it was 27 years ago, and of course everybody knows it was 31 years ago. Come on, man. I'm just trying to get people going. So you can do the math if you'd like, but I think we're pretty clear on that. Ben Goessling, kind enough to join us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. And before we get to football, you are one of us. And we're really devoting most of this program throughout, start to finish, with an effort to get back to the night itself, last night, what took place in downtown St. Paul and downtown Minneapolis, the Wild and the Wolves, both moving on. That I, despite whatever reputation I have, believe that, albeit first round, advancement, or out of the first round to round two, is a night that absolutely should be savored and enjoyed. And for a moment, I don't think you have to think about, could the Wolves do anything against the Spurs without Anthony Edwards? Where is this really leading? Or even in the case of the Wild, now they're playing, the Lanch with no sure things, that we've had so little of even that kind of drama play out in two different arenas on the same night. With even that much at stake, I believe it should absolutely be savored. Where are you on that as a one-of-us guy?
Well, first of all, Dan, I sometimes am called upon to provide mathematical assistance. It actually was 35 years ago that the Twins won the World Series.
Oh, okay, sorry.
1991. Yeah, so it's been a minute. But yes, I think you're right. I think this was a night to savor, in part because it showed both of those teams doing something that we have not seen them do very often. For the Wild, it was stepping on somebody's neck. When you have a chance to put a series away, they get down 2-1, to come back as quickly as they did after they went down, and then to get the go-ahead and then the empty netters at the end. It just is not something we've seen them do that decisively in a lot of their history. And I think, Quinn Hughes he's like a hockey equivalent of a point guard that when he's got the ball in his hands, you just don't worry about it. He doesn't lose the puck off his stick. He can skate around people. It does creative things, obviously going off the guy's skates and for the goal. It is the type of player that they have not had that steadying influence. So to see them do that, and then the Wolves, I think the resourcefulness of it, you have not seen them find ways to win games like that when everything would suggest that they're probably not set up to do it when they're as beat up as they are. And really your best three scorers, at least your best three outside scorers, are not available to you. So the resourcefulness from them and just the sheer, we are putting this thing away, nature that the Wild had. I think it's unique. It's different. It puts both these teams playing in May. the last time they both were playing in
Yeah.
May, it had to be, I don't know, 20 some years ago, probably the Wild run
Yeah.
in
With Lemaire.
2002.
Yep.
And so, yes, I think it's absolutely worth celebrating.
Yeah, and I think they both survived what I would classify as must-wins. To me, the must-win for the Wild was Game 4, because I don't think they had to win last night, but it was a great boot-on-the-throat moment. But to me, the Game 4, I think that was the game they were required to win as opposed to going down 3-1. And obviously, the Wolves' must-win was last night. I don't think, despite their history in going to Denver, it was under very different circumstances that they were going to be able to pull that off in a Game 7. And to me, that's why you take advantage of the opportunity in your own must-win situation, and they both succeeded, at different times, leading ultimately to the fact that they both advanced to the next round. And the Wild's prospects are clearly better because they are healthier, even though there are no guarantees. But we've had even so little of this, as you said. First time the two teams have ever advanced in the same year out of the first round, and neither one of them, let's face it, has had much success at all. The Wolves more lately, for sure, but it was, and as an outsider who's now coming up on, this November I will have been living here for 40 years, so I know that I'm still an outsider. That's not going to change. But I will say, like I was at Target last night for this. I've actually been to the last two in the crowd, paying customer, I will add. And I felt good for the people around me. I did. I sensed everything that you're talking about. That they're going. They're looking. You could tell they're looking around for the bottom to fall out, or in this case, they're looking to the possibility that it doesn't necessarily mean if they lose this game last night, the Wolves, that they choked it or something. They just don't have enough bodies. Denver's going to catch up, right? They're not going to be able to pull this off the whole game. And you can sort of sense in their reaction the realization that, no, they're still here. They're still ahead. It's still a ball game. And the pleasure you could see they derived from that in just the crowd noise, it was a sight to see. Yeah. And then to me, we can get to what happens next and all that stuff later. You should be able to savor that for what it's worth.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think that game, if you look at how depleted they were and you say you've taken home court away from the Nuggets, win on your floor, don't go back to the other team's building when they're saying, hey, it's Game 7, we're at home, they're beat up, they lost their chances for the closeout game. I think all of those things, everybody's waiting for the moment where you have to kind of circle the wagon and say, well, they weren't going to win this one anyway, and we'll have another shot, and all the injuries are a problem. But for them to say, no, it does not matter how beat up we are. It does not matter how much pedigree the team we're playing. And they've played the Nuggets obviously well in the playoffs. But that series, Rudy Gobert, just like the ability to defend at the rim and change what Jokic is able to do and change where they're able to attack. Having players like that add a component that you just don't have an answer for or a counter for. It has been a long time since we've seen those types of players in Minnesota, and those are the ones that tend to make the difference in closeout games. And, in the case of Gobert, and I think Quinn Hughes in a lot of cases for the Wild last night, they had those players, and they came through when they had to.
There's no question about that. All right, let's get to try to mix in some football stuff. Now, I'm trying to think. We chatted last Friday, right? And Friday was the day, but when we talked, the Grenard trade had not been consummated, correct?
Correct. We were, I think, discussing the prospect.
We were talking about it, yeah.
It was going to happen. It was going to happen that day.
Exactly it. That was the day, and then it ultimately ends up happening. And I've addressed it with a couple of the Jackals who are also associated with this show from time to time, including Alec Lewis, Early, and Seifert. And I don't think I got anywhere with them, and I don't know. It's possible I won't get anywhere with you either. I continue to believe that the Vikings granted the Grenard side more leverage than it really even had, or that he had, and they were too resigned to the fact that, well, if it's going to be a problem or he's going to be a problem, we just don't want to mess with that. We don't want somebody around like that. And I get the sentiment, but I still think they gave up too easily, or they did not, at the very least, get enough, not getting the better of the 2 third-round picks from the Eagles. So where are you on that whole discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair point. I think it is one of those things where you can take 2 different approaches. You can say, no, we're digging in our heels. We know we have you under contract. We know what you're worth, and we are going to stick to that. Or you can say, we could see this getting contentious. We could see this getting to the point where there's a hold-in, and you're trying to figure out what the guy is when he's going to show up, how long this is going to go on. They have tended not to want a lot of those things to happen. It's not been without incident in Minnesota. I mean, you've had the Hawkinson hold-in, and Danielle Hunter was a little bit of that before they got a deal done. But they have tended to not want to rock that boat as much in this day and age as you possibly could. And I suppose there's the argument to make that the Eagles weren't going to give up as much because they also had to pay Grenard.
Yeah.
And you are adjusting the compensation because they are going to have to give up money for him as well. But yeah, I think there is an argument to be made of, if you wanted to dig in your heels, whether it's in this draft or whether you say, we're going to wait and somebody is going to lose the pass rusher and we could get a little more for him.
Yep.
That's 2027 draft picks, probably not
True.
2026. So that changes things a little bit too. But this also wasn't seen as a banner draft. So, I think there's an argument to be made for that. I think the way they have gone about it in recent years, this was very much in keeping with that. So I think that part of it was like, yeah, this isn't probably a huge surprise, but I can understand the argument of where the approach of saying, no, we're gonna stand our ground here because we have contractual and market-based leverage in our favor. I mean, you could go that way, certainly.
Yeah, I think, and again, I understand it on one level, but it's interesting because I think it does speak to the organization approach. My sense on KOC, and you're around him obviously a lot, and I've gotten to know him pretty well, is he's the kind of coach, for better or for worse, who isn't comfortable around that kind of tension. And I'm not here to say that he's not wrong, because you probably don't want that kind of tension overall. But I also think historically, if I think of some of the great coaches, they'll play the long game on that a little bit, and they'll say, "I can deal with. Hey, that's why you pay me the big bucks. We'll work our way through here." Unless, I guess, you're utterly convinced that he's going to sit for an entire season, which takes it to another dimension. Yeah. But I think that's part of what makes this story fascinating to me, because I think it's an example of, for better or for worse, the KOC approach, which is, no, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't need that kind of stuff, where some coaches will say, bring it on, I'll deal with it a little bit. Let's see where it goes. Let's see if we can reach a point of some kind of understanding that we have to help each other a little bit. And if there's a couple of rough days at training camp eventually, once he shows up, I'll deal with that too.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting game theory exercise, I guess, because you could sit there and say, how much do you quantify the tension and maybe the impression that has on other players, given the fact it's a guy that's popular in the locker room, is a guy that's had a voice in that locker room. How much do you quantify that? How much do you want to deal with it versus the idea that he's probably not going to sit the entire year? I mean, maybe he was, saying that behind the scenes, or his camp was, but if that contract were to toll, I mean, he's not at a point of his career where he wants to be doing nothing, and you're moving later into your 20s and approaching age 30 without that deal. I don't think that would have been in his favor. So, again, you could sit there and probably go, he's going to have a breaking point with this, that he eventually will say, I'm going to come in, and you work kind of a half measure out like they did with Danielle Hunter, and they could have gone that way. But yes, I think it's always that thing of, how do you quantify the unquantifiable? I mean, I can remember is going to go back a little bit. When I took my accounting classes at the U when I was getting my degree, and my fallback plan was accounting, so I have a rusty old accounting degree, but I remember some of these things where there's some companies will have goodwill as a item in their budget where you are trying to quantify whatever goodwill is worth. And there's a little bit of that math here. It's like, how do you put a number on that? How do you put a value on it? I think it's a little bit of the exercise they go through of, if this is going on and there's tension or there's some level of discomfort in the building, what does that do for the rest of the team? And I think they have wanted to avoid that. O'Connell, I think, has been in some of these situations where he has had to be the one smoothing things over, whether it's with Neil Hunter, whether it's with Hawkinson. I think even when the Jefferson contract negotiations were going on, he's the one that is typically doing the, hey, we're in this together and we understand you're trying to get a good deal for you, and we're all trying to be solutions oriented, I think would be the phrase they would use a lot of times. So, and that's probably more of a Kwesi phrase, but O'Connell was certainly the guy being the emissary a little bit in some of those things, and probably I think he was involved, talking to Jonathan Grenard quite a bit through this as well. And as a former player, I think he comes at it from saying, hey, I understand this side of it and where you're coming from too. But there is, I think, very much an accounting system in that building that would say, hey, the goodwill is worth something. And, again, you can dispute that, or it's hard to put an exact number on that. But I do think in their way of looking at it, that idea does carry some weight and some financial value probably attached to that.
Ben Goessling now. Mike Conley's going to join us at the top of the hour. Do you buy the notion, or do you believe that Brzezinski does have the early inside advantage, or do you believe the Vikings, when I think up till now the Wilfs have pretty much said there are no advantages for anybody, we're going to look at everybody, including Rob, but that there's no insider edge that he might have?
Yeah, I think their process probably will be similar to what they did last time, where, again, it's going to be a little different because Kwesi Adofo-Mensah was handling some of this with coaches, but I think a lot of that process was, let's go and put everybody through the same battery of questions so we have apples to apples comparisons of all these different approaches to doing this. So I would imagine they'll use something similar to that, and you try to say who does the best in those set of assessments and not give it an unfair advantage or, a familiarity advantage, I guess, to one person. But at the same time, when they're talking about we want somebody that can build alliances and get people working together across the building, Rob Brzezinski has worked with the Wilfs longer than anybody in that building. He knows how they think. He knows what is important to them. I remember a couple of years ago doing a story on the 20th anniversary, or their 20 years of ownership, I should say. And that came up a lot in conversations with people in the front office, including with Rob, where he just talked about this is important to them, that everybody's aligned and that they came through a good process where everybody is in relative agreement or can reach some level of consensus. So I think when he's talking about team building's been a passion of mine, he's studied all of these things. I think some of that is to make the case that I know what you guys are looking for because I've seen it, I've observed it, I've been a part of it. I think that level of knowledge, that level of familiarity probably is worth a lot in this process. And I think the fact that he's been running the department for the last few months has to play into it to some degree. You're going to have, and it's not impossible that somebody comes in and interviews so well that they're so impressed with that person that they give them the job, but you are going to have to, I think, supersede what you have from Rob Brzezinski, his knowledge, his relationships. A lot of people, I think, including Kevin O'Connell, who are going to say, this guy is really good for this building and let's give it a shot. And you fill out the front office around him beyond that. But I would think that a lot of the ways he's talked about himself are trying to position him as the answer to the question the Wilfs are asking. So I think all of those things may not give him the absolute advantage, but they're nice tools to have in your tool belt as you go through this process.
Let's get to the most important thing as we wrap up, and that is I'm pretty sure I read that the London Marathon, there were 2 runners who broke the 2-hour mark. They were sub 2 hours, including, I think, the one who finished second. He was a first-time marathoner.
Yep.
So you're the big-time running representative on this show. What does this mean to you? How do we explain it? And is this going to become, at any point, the new norm?
I think it will. It was incredibly fascinating to watch because this had only been done once in history, and it was Eliud Kipchoge did it, I think, about 9 years ago in kind of a contrived setting where he had pacers, he had a perfectly flat course, he had pace lights to have them be on an efficient course and all of these things. And everybody would say, yeah, it doesn't count because it wasn't official. It's like, yeah, the guy still had to go do it. And he has 2 Olympic golds, so it's like he's no hack. I mean, I think what that did for people was, and he's talked about this, it showed everybody that it was possible. I mean, it's like back in the 50s when Roger Bannister was the first under 4 minutes in the mile, you had a lot of people after that say, okay, this can be done, and it takes that first person to go do it to show that it can happen. So I think you go back to that and then you move to this. It was only a matter of time before somebody did it in an official setting like this, and it's been a lot of this is belief. I think that's a huge part of it. I mean, I talk to my athletes all the time about being able to believe something's possible is a big step in actually going to do it. If you don't see yourself breaking through a threshold or winning a race, you're probably not going to get there. So the effect he had on this process, I think, is really important. But the sports science of this is really fascinating, and a lot of people have released pretty detailed accounts of what they did. I mean, some of it's the shoes, and the shoes have gotten way more high-tech, way more efficient, way more lightweight. I mean, that stuff absolutely has a big part of this. But the way all of these guys fueled was way different, too. It's been this, let's take way more carbs in over the course of an hour than anybody ever had. It's basically putting higher octane fuel in a race car than anybody's done. And a lot of this they've learned from the cyclists, they've learned from the Nordic skiers. So there's all of this shared knowledge between sports that everybody's saying, okay, if this worked over here, maybe we can try this. And the technology with the shoes and the sports science with the nutrition has a lot to do with this. It's athletes being in better shape. It's training, all of these things. But everybody saying, how can we take every advantage we have in terms of how we outfit the race car and fuel the race car, so to speak, is a very big part of this. And so the 2 guys break it, and the third place guy, Jacob Kiplimo, also broke the old world record. So it was a pretty incredible feat, and on a very flat, fast course, too. So that's not an accident. But yeah, the achievement is a big part of this, but the sports science is fascinating, too.
We only have 1 minute left because we got Conley at the top of the hour. The shoes, by the way, I'm reading weigh 3.4 ounces in the case of the marathon winner, which just stuns me. But also, I'm reading that the whole regimen, the food regimen, is in the thinking there is changing dramatically to where sugary carbohydrates are okay. Yep. Bottles loaded with glucose and fructose, things like that. Is that true too?
Yep. Yes. Man. Yeah. Basically, the faster you're running, the more your body is burning carbs and the less it's burning fat. So if the faster you go, the fuel you need is going to have to go support really fast paces. The problem is you burn through that really quickly. Your body takes longer to burn fat than it does to burn through carbs. So what they've said is let's just put in a lot more fuel. And a lot of that is, can your gut handle it? And you can figure out on your own what that means. I don't need to say that on the radio while people are perhaps eating their dinner. But that has had a lot to do with it. It's a fascinating change, no doubt.
Appreciate you as always, my friend. We'll chat next week. Thanks, Ben.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dan.
Ben Goessling covers the Vikings for Star Tribune and, of course, StarTribune.com. Let's stay on schedule. We expect a phone call via the hotline from Wolves point guard Mike Conley. Let's get his reaction to a remarkable night at Target Center. Mr. Conley is next here in the...
Never miss your chance to know what the latest sports news is in town, chances to win tickets, or just knowing what's going on with all of your favorite KFAN shows. You can follow KFAN 1003 on all of our social channels like Instagram, TikTok, X, YouTube. Stay connected and follow the sports leader, KFAN.
Always a pleasure to chat with a longtime contributor and friend of this program. Wolves guard Mike Conley is kind enough to join us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Mike, congratulations. Thank you for the time, as always. How did your team get it done last night?
Man, honestly, it was just one of those things where, we knew we were going to be undermanned, but at the same time, we didn't lack any confidence, going into it because of the guys we still had available. I think we just trusted each other and kind of found a rhythm early in that game. And, always believed that we'd still be able to win it regardless of who was out. And, I think you could just tell by the way we were playing, the energy that we were playing with, every guy that stepped on that floor and those, even on the bench who were, cheering us on and giving us energy. It was just a complete team win.
You've won. You've played on you've had a lot of victories over the course of your career. Some much later in the playoffs as well than this one. But I would tend to believe, despite your long history, that there can't be many more satisfying than that game, given the circumstances last night. Do you agree?
Yeah, it's hard to find another game. I mean, other than the Game 7 in Denver, would I have, maybe put that one up there. But last night, given the circumstances, I think it was one of those games that you'll remember, for a long time. Just who you're playing and the atmosphere, the temperature of the series, how much back and forth it was, and the rivalry and all that, and obviously the injuries and just relying on young players to step up in big moments, and everybody step up in big moments. It was a fun game.
How did you? I really felt like there were points in again this series where it looked to me like you guys defeated them mentally. And you're talking about championship pedigree players in a number of cases, really good players, right? And I felt that there were stretches where it didn't look like they wanted all of it or all of you the way you guys seemed to want all of them. Yeah,
I think that it was the mentality that we brought to that series. It was the physicality. It was, Coach from day one of, preparing for the series was just like, we're going to use our depth, try to wear them out, try to make the fourth quarters, when they look up there, their legs are tired, the shots are shorter. They stop thinking as well. All those things happen when you get fatigued. And I think that we had the guys who are in great shape and can defend and can do it on both ends. And that was the recipe for us, was just try to, the war of attrition type mentality. And we're built for it.
If I'm ranking, there were so many different parts that contributed, especially last night. In fact, it looked to me like it was a night where a lot of players made good you guys made good basketball plays. Very few, relatively speaking, compared to certainly the last game, fewer turnovers. Just the old deal of let's just go play, do what you can do to help us. But at the top of the food chain, I can't get past defensively the tone that continued to be set by Jaden, obviously, in the perimeter, and Rudy. It all seemed to me that it came off of that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think those two were, Rudy and Jaden were the guys leading the way this series. They had the matchups that, they were going to make or break the series for us. They were, we had the confidence in them to go out there and, execute what they needed to execute, and they did. I thought Rudy was, played some of the best, defense in basketball that I've seen him play in a while, and especially against Jokic and their matchups they've had in history that they've had. So, just was happy to see both of them, honestly shining and getting the credit that they deserve, and, everybody understanding why, we are who we are is because of the identity that they bring.
Did your head drop at all when you get the word that in addition to obviously Anthony being out and DiVincenzo not being available, that DeSumo also was not going to be available last night.
It was a quick head drop, and then it was a couple of us in the locker room. We heard, and we all looked up and was like, "Hey, TJ, it's time to go. This is opportunity. Mike, it's time. More minutes. Bones." Everybody was just kind of more excited. Like, hey, we got the depth. Let's go out there and just have fun and do it. And so the opportunity was more exciting for guys than the thought of, what we're not going to be bringing into the battle. So I thought everybody just took it in stride. We knew we were going to be missing guys, and especially with Io Kyle out too, it was just like, hey, let's just go up there and do what we do, and we'll win the game if we play the right way.
Whether it was a moment when you were on the court, because I thought you had some really good moments yourself, or you're on the bench watching it, was there a stretch of that game in particular where it crystallized, yeah, we can do this. We can beat this team despite these circumstances?
Honestly, I thought it was the first quarter, the way we started when TJ got downhill a few times, and I think the score, there was a timeout there, like 13-7 or whatever it was, or 10-7, somewhere around there. And it was like, oh no, we're here. Like we're here. We're not going nowhere. This is how we're going to play. I could tell the tempo was set, the stage was set, the standard was set, and we weren't going away. So that first quarter really kind of got in everybody's head. Like this isn't just a game. We're going out here to see what we can do. We're trying, obviously, in the series.
It also, to your point on Shannon, what cracked me up is it's inside the last 2 minutes of the game, and it's still a ball game. You're ahead, but you still need to stay ahead, right? And you run, you could probably tell me what the play was. It sure as hell looked like an isolation play where it was Shannon with the ball out high, presumably with, he being allowed to make the decision about what he's going to do, whether he's going to try to break somebody down or take an outside shot. And I think he ended up driving to the left and scoring. But I'm thinking, this is crazy. A guy who hasn't started at all, who's viewed as a player who's got some talent, but has not had a chance really to do anything. And the game is on the line. Your future, as a team is on the line, and the ball is in his hands to do something with it.
Yeah, I think it just tells you, how we feel about him and what he can bring to the team. I think, it's interesting because you put, say, like Ant in that situation or somebody else, Julius, they're probably sending a double team right away, right?
Good point.
They're not getting opportunity. And TJ, they still are probably like not trusting the fact that he can possibly do what he does. And we know good and well that whoever's in front of him doesn't have a chance, to stay in front of him. And that, he's going to make a good decision, whether it be at the rim or he's going to attack the rim, get fouled, or, just make the right play, simple play. So, it actually was, the best option at the time, kind of gets people, spread the floor and let him get downhill and make a play. And he did it.
Help us get into Jaden's head, because you know him well. You've been around him for a long time. He's a fascinating cat because, he kind of does what he does, which is generally to fly a little bit under the radar. There are times where it seems like he gets a little frustrated. He had the deal, a couple years ago where he gets frustrated and breaks his hand hitting a wall, for God's sake. So he's not in the Denver. The first time you guys lose to Denver, he's not in the series. So give us a sense of what makes him run, or his head, where his head is at. How unique a player. You've had a lot of interesting teammates. Where does Jaden rank?
Honestly, I can't answer the question. I don't know. I don't know what gets him, up or down for situations. All I know is you look him in the eye and he has the same expression. He's like, he's good with whatever happens. He's one of them guys that he really doesn't care. He'll say what's on his mind. He wants to win. He'll go stretches where he says, I don't care if I touch the ball at all. I'm going to pick up, 94 feet and just wear everybody down. And he'll turn to a maniac defensively. And there's times I'm like, man, you need to shoot like 10 more times before you get out of this game. And he'll just start shooting a bunch, and he just, look at you and be like, is that what you wanted? Kind of thing. Like, he just does whatever, you ask him to do. And, so he's motivates himself somehow, but he figures it out.
13 for 25 last night, and the guy he's guarding went 4 for 17. I mean, that pretty much says it all, doesn't it?
It does. It says a lot about him. The personal matchup he takes, the pride he takes in his, ability to play both ends of the floor. It's just remarkable that he's able to have the stamina to do both, because that is a hard thing to do, to play two ways and be effective on both ways and really dominate the game.
To me, this is probably not news to you, because for a long time the word behind the scenes was that when teams came calling for trade options, that the organization viewpoint was Jaden can't be in this deal, so don't even bring him up. And I understood it, but I also said, well, sometimes you got to give something to get something. But I got to admit, man, after last night, to me, there can never, I don't know that there can in a long time be any kind of discussion on dealing him when you see what he might be capable of. And I think we're all waiting. Can he sustain as the kind of main scorer? Not necessarily a guy's got to score 28, but maybe a guy who can get to 20, because he's getting closer every year. He's got to be pretty close to untouchable at this point, doesn't he?
Yeah, he dang near should be. I think his resume, the things he's already done, the things he does every day on a daily basis for us that people don't see, is probably even more important to our team. It's more important to the success of the future of the team. Just, seeing his growth, his work ethic, and his abilities is he's just one of those few guys that can do all the things you need a player to do at his size, and still young and growing. So, just, excited that he's getting the due credit that he's getting, but he's a guy who's going to keep getting better, and hopefully as the years go on, and I'll be gone at some point, but as years go on, and Nas and Julius and guys like that, they're able to figure out how to get him to that 20 points a game or 21, whatever it is, to keep him involved in the game offensively, to keep his rhythm and continue to show people what he can do. You
guys were relentless going downhill. Obviously, the paint numbers are dramatic, the advantage you had. They have no rim protection, as Jaden made very, very clear, and he's right. You're going to play a team that makes it a lot harder to go downhill. So what's the magical answer? What's the approach that you guys have to take? Is it a different one? Is it more about shooting than it is necessarily getting downhill against the Spurs with Wemby?
Well, I think the idea will still be the same. You want to crack the paint, and you want to get penetration in the paint. Yes, that can mean a lot of different things. In the Denver series, it meant attack the rim, because they weren't contesting the layups. They're giving you layups or floaters and things like that. San Antonio might be different. It might be attack the paint to create a swing on the other side, or create a blender situation where the ball is just moving and they're playing catch up the entire time, and we knock down a couple, threes from the corner or from the top of the break or wherever we're getting them from, or we might have to rely on, mid-range jump shots instead of, getting too close to Wemby as you get closer to the basket. So there's a lot of different ways you can work out of just being able to create, dribble drive situations. So hopefully that's something that we can attack and continue to be aggressive with, and not turn into, the team that just settles for the first shot we see. Is there hope on Ant? Oh yeah, there's hope. There's hope. We're gonna have to do some work on our end though. These first few games, to see if we can, get one on the road and just continue to give him time and see how he comes out. Congratulations! I could see the big smile on your face late in that game, that you, even at this late date, you enjoy it. Those kinds of winning moments every bit as much as when you were much
much younger. I could sense it. Congratulations and best of luck in the Spurs series.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
That sounds good. I hope so. Mike Conley, Timberwolves point guard, who I thought had some very nice moments again last night, on a night where it had to be Wolves complimentary players by committee. And as I said with him, I said this earlier in the show, I think DeLaval, make plays. That's what I think a lot of the players beyond the so-called Big Two did in this case. Just make good basketball plays.
It's the Bumper to Bumper Show Wrap.
It's brought to you by American Pressure.
Sunday sermons, are you back this week or are you out again? Outstanding. We're working on a couple of guests for Sunday. We're going to keep this momentum going. Seasonal boost is upon us, so there'll be plenty more Wild and Wolves-related content, especially including some guests, if I have it my way. I want to thank an outstanding array of guests today that included... we just chatted with Mike Conley. We had Ben Goessling today. We had Lavelle E. Neal III today. And we had yet another in an endless series of memorable conversations with Bill Guerin of the Minnesota Wild. That was between 3:30 and 4. I'm sure all of this will be podcastable and available to each and every one of you. But I got a text earlier in the show from Jacob in Maple Grove wondering if this show would have been easier to prep for if both teams had lost last night, not from a pessimism standpoint, just thinking of 2 Game 7s this weekend would have provided more talkers. It's an interesting question because you're right. Neither one of the local teams was going to be eliminated last night. They were both still going to be in Game 7 situations. I guess we'll never know. It would have milked the conversation longer. But in the end, I think the lesson that the teams provided is you got a chance to wrap it up at home, you wrap it up at home. And that's what they both did in that competitive sense that we, frankly, have not always seen our teams in just such a situation take full advantage of the opportunity. So we'll never know. But the beauty of milking it is we can be milking the story as we can now begin previewing the next round. In the case of the Wild against the Lanch, and in the case of the Wolves, of course, against the San Antonio Davy Spurs. Sunday, we'll reacquaint people with why we always say San Antonio Davy, because people do get confused on that from time to time. I'll work on my math some more, even though that might have been turned into a bit of a bit. Fan and a Man in the Air?
Yes.
Right around the corner. We will talk to you Sunday morning at 9. Have a terrific weekend.